and welcome to a new Inspiring Psychology Practices video. Today we got a long trip down France, so we thought we'd film some videos whilst in the car. And yeah, so this month is kind of exciting because it is 25 years since Wendy became a psychologist, and it is 18 years since Wendy's been in private practice as a psychologist. So kind of some big milestones, and we decided on our Facebook group at Inspiring Psychology Practices to ask if anyone had any questions, and that we would do a Q&A, or I would do the questions and Wendy would do the answering. So please don't forget to subscribe or like this video if you enjoyed it. We're making lots of content at the moment, so there's lots of stuff coming out, and leave comments below if you want to add your experience to any of the questions, or you have any insights. We just want to hear about as many psychologists' experiences in private practice and just like build a community. So without further ado, I'm gonna ask the first question. So first question, what have you learned about work-life balance in these 25 years, aka the secret to life?
I think I don't think work-life balance is the thing I'm best at. That's my first reaction, but then when I think about how we've set up my practice in France now, when I think about how I'm starting to make decisions, I would say I'm getting better and better at it. And in particular, so why would I say I don't think I'm very good at it? I'm not a person who comes to rest very easily, but in terms of setting life up to be full of things that I enjoy doing, that I think I've done a much better job of. So what was really instrumental for me a few years ago actually was starting to or was deciding to work on my own projects and not only concentrate on delivering associate work, which associate work as an occupational psychologist is what clinical psychs might come across as referrals, or just being an associate for another practice. So yeah, even though I ran a very successful associate practice, I was an associate partner with a consultancy in Germany, and I built the practice in France up to 6 figures and things, and the practice in Germany was nearly €1 million turnover. It got to a point actually in 2012 when I was organising my mother's funeral whilst running an assessment centre from Madrid, whilst organising psychometric tests for a workshop a couple of weeks later that I was organising, and I just thought, this isn't how I want things to be. So I kind of went back to basics with a lot of things, and I guess my maxim now is paying more attention to to my time, energy, and my attention, to be quite honest. I know the things that I don't like doing. I know the things that I really love doing and where I create a lot of value. And I just try to do more of the things that I enjoy doing where I create a lot of value, and I don't do the things where I don't create value and I don't enjoy doing them. That's essentially a strengths-based approach as well. So yeah, that's how, but it's it's a process that takes time, I guess.
Cool. So second question, what have been the most influential experiences in your career so far?
Okay, definitely moving overseas, so moving across borders, and it's been influential in different ways. First of all, it you know, when we first moved to France in 2003, it was such a destabilizing experience for me that I basically developed a practice on the basis of helping international companies to move people around the world in ways that didn't kind of destroy their performance or didn't endanger their performance, but actually led to an improvement in performance. And it's that element of the improvement. Improvement isn't strictly the only thing. I would say it's more a kind of an enrichment of people's capability. It's kind of accessing more of who you are, finding out more about who you are, finding out about more about what you want to be, do, have, see, experience in the world. And for me, moving across international borders has been that kind of transformative experience. And it's not always easy, but you know, some of these things aren't. But it is always meaningful. I've always found it meaningful. So yeah, it would be that.
What are the challenges you see for current or early career psychologists, and what advice might you offer them?
So I think, yeah, it's a really good question, and it's quite a complex question. One of the things that I got super cross about back in a few years ago when tuition fees were put up to over £9,000 a year was the impact on postgraduate, the cost of, well, on access to postgraduate qualifications, especially by people coming from not only people from less advantaged backgrounds. I mean, I think it impacts a lot of people. So unless you're like really well off, even if you're kind of middle class, you're going to start thinking about really how much it's costing to, you know, become a psychologist, basically. So that is part of it, and at the same time, we've seen this kind of fragmentation, seems like, in the opportunities and the places that you can go to get your chartership, and that's both. I think it's challenging as well as an opportunity in other ways. So the way in which it's challenging is that the ways in which it's an opportunity is there's a lot more openness in how you can practice as a psychologist. And so, you know, the people that I mentor now, kind of early career people, the advice I'm always giving is to kind of network and just, you know, keep yourself open for opportunities. So, but yeah, that's really challenging. And then I think the third thing, obviously, we've been through so much disruption over the last few years. I don't think that disruption's going to end anytime soon, because if it's not pandemic stuff we're dealing with, it's going to be some kind of political stuff, or it's going to be some kind of environmental issues. You know, we're just living in those really challenging times. And so that, I think, is challenging. And then the fourth issue is just that disruption is kind of calling into question a lot of the paradigms, tenets, principles, ways of operating for us as psychologists. And I think that's both a challenge in terms of understanding what's the what's the way forward, and not having necessarily a lot of certainty about what's coming in the future. But at the same time, it creates a lot of openness and opportunities, and we're at a point where perhaps we can reshape some of these things in ways that are really important, like with the regenerative practices kind of stuff that we're doing with the community. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts.
Yeah, and similarly, it seems to have exploded in the last year even, how psychologists are now on social media and online.
That's true.
A lot more, almost they're flipping from being in person, which was a huge part of being a psychologist, and now it's like this online presence.
Yeah, that's a big disruptor. Yeah, you're right.
So another question which kind of carries on from that last one is, where do you see the future is within psychology?
I don't know. I can tell you some of the things that I want to see happen. I think we need to come together much more, cross-disciplinary. So that's one of our principles in IPP, in Inspiring Psychology Practices, and also in Practice Accelerator. We need to build practices that are regenerative, you know, bringing in some of these living systems principles and recrafting what private practice looks like. We do need private practice, I think, and thinking about what are profitable private practice models that are nevertheless regenerative and will put back in much more than they take out, whatever that is. So those are two things I really want to see. And the other thing is much more truly international collaboration. So, you know, when I was working with MOD, we had this idea of the kind of 5 nations coming together. You know, we had psychologists from USA, Canada, UK, Australia and New Zealand, and I think they were on something called the Technical Cooperation, it's TTCP, and I can't remember the last P stood for, panel, I think. But we're missing out so much psychology of the world by not incorporating, you know, countries from the global south. You know, what about all these other nations and countries? Why are we so kind of white Western dominated as a profession? It's like, oh come on, we're missing so much diversity and richness and everything, and talent and problem-solving capability. We've got too much need on our doorsteps to be faffing about and kind of losing 80% of the world's wisdom. Oh, anyway, so I'll get on a soapbox about that, but yeah, we have to start breaking down a lot of that stuff. And then I think the overall thing is this message of we really must start working together to kind of problem solve and to create change and to create conditions for change, like really rapidly. So we'll see what that looks like as well.
Well, what that might look like is what we're trying to build with these community sessions.
Yeah.
One of the episodes is already on the YouTube channel if you want to check it out, but
yeah, so come along to the next one.
Yeah.
We talked about that being bi-monthly, and it looks like we've had lots of messages from people saying we've got more energy for this. So we're going to try and get some a bit more frequently than every other month.
Yeah. So next question, what have been some of the highest highs and lowest lows in your career? What have these experiences taught you?
Highest highs are usually like individual sessions, bizarrely. Not bizarrely, because it's about connecting with people. So that's where I get that sometimes a real sense of elation just from the you know, just from seeing people like shift massively. I guess one of the the highest highs in that sense for me recently has been kind of moving into and training in internal family systems therapy and applying that to coaching, because I've just found it such an absolutely fundamental shift in my practice. But whenever we can, you know, just seeing people shift, seeing people flourish, seeing the guys on TPPA flourishing and publishing books and just having fabulous opportunities open to them, those are the highest highs. The lowest lows was, you know, experiencing burnout when I was a military psychologist and coming back. I got promoted when I was 7 months pregnant, so I felt a lot of pressure to come back. I also had a pretty kind of traumatic birth experience with an emergency C-section, and nevertheless I came back to work when my son was 8 weeks old, and my husband stayed home and kind of took unpaid parental leave for 4 or 5 months, I think. But I wasn't even recovered from the birth at that point, and I went into a situation that was absolutely toxic, and you know, my mental health really suffered as a consequence of that, and I was absolutely burnt out. And actually, I mean, I don't regret it in the sense that it was one of the things that led to me wanting to leave the Ministry of Defence and to move overseas and to set myself up in private practice. So, you know, like a lot of these things, you get to a certain point, you think something's really got to change, and that's what I did.
Yeah. Next question: has the pandemic impacted the way you practice and what you see as opportunities for the future?
Yes and no. So the month before the lockdown kicked off, I had word from one of my big corporate clients that this project, this development program we'd spent 3 years putting together, had just been accepted by the global head of talent and like the CHRO, and they were going to roll it out across the company. And that was all to do with, that was going to be about supporting everybody in the company, that they, especially in the executive area, that they move across the world. So that was super exciting, and it was a confirmation, because we'd done some and still doing some brilliant work there. And then lockdown happened and everything went on hold. So that has meant taking a step back from that corporate stuff. I still do, I mean, I still have a corporate practice, and since then we've been kind of adapting around it. So the corporate practice is, I would say, still in this phase of looking at and still supporting companies who have gone through this big disruption. And at some point in the future, those international job moves are going to really kick off again, possibly sometime next year. And it's going to be even more important that we both support them in ways that help people to grow as opposed to burn out, and that we also understand the return on investment from them, because that was the big piece of work that I've been doing with this corporate, where we've been capturing data around return on investment and building a model of, you know, return on investment. It's a bit of a holy grail within that area. So at the moment, that part of it was treading water. At the same time, there was a massive disruption to psychologists in private practice, and that meant the side of my business, which is around, well, you know, working with Ava on Psychology Practice Accelerator and inspiring psychology practices, that ramped up massively, because so many more psychologists were either pivoting or seeking support, or, you know, wanting to get clarity, because they were also going through all of this kind of brainstorming, as well as disruption, as well as burnout. So there was a choice, really, which was, you know, if we could, and we started to scale up IPP and build capacity into this business, because this is not going away, and we believe, and we have a lot of ideas, and we believe we have a lot to offer psychologists. And so there's been this element of turning up the volume a bit more on IPP and just allowing the other stuff to tread water for a little while. It's not gone away. I'm still working with global organizations, and I'm still coaching, and you know, doing all these things. But that specific program, which is around moving execs around the world and measuring return on investment, and kind of showing that, demonstrating value creation from global job moves to the board, that was that whole program. That is just, we've turned down the volume on that a little bit at the moment. So that was the strategic challenge and opportunity that came up with the pandemic for me anyway.
And that's the thing, is that you've built a psychology practice around allowing you to pivot your practice when something big happens. And that's why our tagline is an inspiring psychology practice that fits with your life, and being able to dial up, dial down everywhere, and adapt and change your practice's identity slightly, and just building that culture within our practice where it's okay to be flexible and metamorphosis into something new, like
metamorphosize
into something new. So and that's what we're teaching other psychologists, so that they can do the same. So please let us know in the comments, and we'll post it on social media and everything about this video, if you want us to do another video like this, or if you want them to become a bit more regular.
There may be another one, because we've got a couple of questions in my Instagram account that I forgot to tell Ava about, so you've got an opportunity to send some more in.
Send some more in, put them in the comments below. Again, like and subscribe, keep watching if you enjoy it, and just keep in contact with us. We love having conversations with you. We don't just want to be talking to the camera. So thanks so much for watching, and hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one.